Hello everybody, we are going to be doing our first second round preview for the Stanley Cup playoffs, this one being the Edmonton Oilers against the Vegas Golden Knights, which actually doesn't kick off until Wednesday, but I already had them done because it was the first second round matchup we knew about. So yeah, please make sure to subscribe to my channel if you're new to me, new to hockey, whatever the case may be, as I try to do this as a career. So if you want to subscribe, do so, and if not, no big deal, as we kick off this video, this preview that I'm really looking forward to. And let's start with Vegas, who had a great regular season. Of course, ended up finishing with the best record in the Western Conference and down the Winnipeg Jets in 5 games in the first round. As for the Oilers, they ended up getting hot pretty late in the year. March onwards, they just were incredible. They finished second in the Pacific before they overthrew royalty by beating the Kings in 6 games in a matchup that we had seen the year prior that took 7 games. This time it was a little bit shorter. But yeah, that was a quick summary of both sides. Of course, you kind of probably know the story at this point, but what are some storylines that you should kind of be focused on for this series? The first one is how much Jay Woodcroft will play his top guys. Basically, how much will he play Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl respectively. The Oilers look to do damage, definitely, like they did last year with McDavid and Draisaitl kind of leading the way. And will they be able to do that, or how will they do that? Basically by playing them a lot of minutes, or at least I expect them to be playing their best guys a lot. It does make sense too if you've been keeping track of the playoffs and just kind of how much that Woodcroft's been throwing them out there. At the time of taking these notes, which was last night, McDavid actually led all forwards for time on ice per game played, playing about 25 minutes a night in the playoffs, and then Leon Draisaitl was second behind him, playing about 24 minutes a night. So part of Woodcroft's decision probably ties into Mattias Janmark ended up getting hurt early on in the series against the Kings, and so they had 11 forwards. He decided to keep it that way and then would double shift these two with Draisaitl and McDavid. The Athletic, again, I don't get paid by them, ended up doing a pretty good article in their preview, and I decided to take a bit of this from that. Now, I didn't take all of it or anything like that by any means, but yes, I did kind of open my eyes to seeing just how much he's going to probably play them here. And I do think we saw that last year as well at times in the playoffs. So I would say that we will see them play a ton, like I said. Now, will Janmark probably come back at some point in the playoffs? I think so. From what I can find online, it seems like he'll probably be back in the lineup, but I still don't see 29 and 97's minutes going down dramatically. At the end of the day, these two are a big driving force of what they've been able to do, and I think for a lot of teams, they just know what's going to happen here. And for Vegas, they have to be very vigilant here in this matchup, because you look at a team like the Kings, they threw out Philip Deneau and Onza Kopitar, and against these two, they really tried to keep them shadowed there, play them a lot of minutes against these dynamic duos, like I said. But for Kopitar and Deneau, they are two forwards that kind of are just known for their defensive skill and their play, or at least they have been historically, and you would think, oh, this is going to go really well for them. Not really, especially for Kopitar against Draisaitl in 5-on-5. Things did not go well at all. In fact, they were actually scored 7-1 when Kopitar was out there on the ice against Draisaitl at 5-on-5. So that's not really good. It does make you wonder a bit how Vegas will contain or try to contain them. Now, the Golden Knights will probably have some players they're going to throw out there. Mark Stone will be paired with at least one of these two, or try to shadow at least one of these two, if not more. And good news for them, despite his back injury that he's coming back from, he did play at least 18 minutes a night in 4 out of the 5 games against Winnipeg in the opening series. So again, that's probably a guy that's going to be relied on in this to try to help them out. But of course, you know that this is going to be a team effort. And the good news is for Vegas, they did a great job at limiting high danger chances against and high danger shots against. And when you have guys like McDavid and Draisaitl, you know you're probably going to have those chances against yourself. So I feel like while it won't be impossible to stop them, it's going to have to be a big thing to keep them out of the slot at 5-on-5. Something that Vegas did a lot. The PK probably could be a little bit different of a story in this series, although part of me thinks that the issues Vegas faced, not even the issues, but some of the problems that they faced on the penalty kill this year had to do with their goaltending. They had a lot of goalies that they used, and they ended up finishing 21st in the league for save percentage by their netminders at .852. So considering that the Oilers are a pretty good power play team, considered they're actually the best power play team of all time, going back to 1977 in the regular season, I would say that that is going to be another factor in what we talk about with McDavid and Draisaitl. And like I said, I just don't see them playing any less than 20-some minutes a night, so expect them to be out there a lot on the ice. Now, the second storyline that I wanted to talk about here is whether or not Vegas can stay disciplined while we talk over and over and over about Edmonton's electric offense. We know the fact that they are a team that has got a lot of power play goals, but you got to be able to get on the power play. Does this mean that Vegas can do a good job at avoiding hurting themselves by making those silly mistakes? It actually does, because the regular season indicated a lot of good things for Vegas. The biggest thing is they were the least penalized team in the league last year. They actually had 243 penalties called against them, with the second closest being the St. Louis Blues at 264. Now, like the Ottawa Senators were at something like 389, so the gap was pretty big there. But for the Golden Knights to be able to not have a lot of penalties called against you, to average the lowest amount of time on ice per game played down a man, is going to be big in this one when playing a team like Edmonton in the second round here. But I do think one of the bad things for the Golden Knights in this series, regardless of how much you can protect yourself, Edmonton is not a team that necessarily drew a lot of time on the power play this year. In fact, they finished 21st for time on ice per game played on the power play, but still, of course, finished with the best power play in the league this year. They're able to bury the pucks in the back of the net. Not a shocking thing. So for Vegas, while I will say limiting penalties is going to be a big focal point in being able to win this series, you also have to be able to go out there and do it on the ice. They could have 2 or 1 penalties in a game against Edmonton. That could be the difference if McDavid or Draisaitl or somebody else was able to score a goal in this one. So Bruce Cassidy is really going to have to be able to make this a big talking point for his guys when they are practicing, when they are going into these games. If he calls a timeout, they're going to have to make sure that in those limited times, even if there is a limited amount of time, things don't get ugly, because that's when a series could get out of hand for Vegas. Now, the third storyline here is whether or not Jack Eichel can be a star for Vegas. There's no disputing what Eichel has been able to do in his career. He's been a very good player. That's just the fact of the matter. But I will say one thing that is really important for a guy like him is the fact that he is drafted so high up and he's going to be consistently compared to other big names because he was taken so high in the draft. But of course, a guy like Connor McDavid, which is as good as it gets, a former first overall pick that was taken 1 pick before Eichel. This is a matchup series, and while I don't exactly like to say, oh, a player's legacy is defined by this and that, I will say McDavid's career is already looking better and probably will end up being better than Eichel's. But for Eichel to be able to, have a good series, to be able to step up and be able to hopefully play a factor in beating McDavid and going on to possibly win a Stanley Cup would be absolutely massive for himself and his team. Because yes, at the end of the day, McDavid's probably going to end up with more goals, more points, more assists. He's probably going to end up with more individual awards. He's already a guy that's going to probably finish with more awards than most people in their career. But for Eichel, you know that team success could be a big difference here, as if the the Golden Knights are able to go on and win this, they could say that, well, McDavid is a good player and he's a better player definitely than Eichel right now, and probably will always will be. You can say that Eichel might have played a factor in stepping up when it mattered most, and if he is able to win a cup, you can say, well, that's something that McDavid didn't do, and at that point, that would be a good sticking point for Eichel, kind of like with Crosby and Ovechkin. Now, while Crosby is a more storied player than Eichel, and he ended up getting a cup, OV and all that stuff kind of was where Ovi didn't have a cup, and Crosby did, so clearly Crosby's the better player. Will that be the case here? Definitely not, because again, McDavid in the gap between him and everybody else is pretty significant, at least when you look at some of the more basic stats, and in general, the highlights are going to favor McDavid. Eichel's just going to have to play well. But the good news is for him, he did have 5 points in a 5-game series in the first round against the Jets. So for him, why not go out there? Why not just try to tear it up? Why not try to prove all the haters wrong? Why not make Buffalo fans mad? Why not make Edmonton fans mad? Why not make Connor McDavid fans mad? All while doing damage for your team, helping your team out, possibly doing that work on the power play. That would be good for them, as Eichel did end up scoring some power play goals in this previous series. And then the final talking point is whose non-starters will be able to help them out more in this series, because ultimately this is a team sport, so who's going to be more reliable? So for Vegas, I think they have less traditional names for who the goal scorers could be, but I also think that they have some very underrated guys. William Karlsson sticks out a little bit. While he hasn't been able to find a lot of success since Vegas' inaugural season, he did have a 43-goal campaign during that stretch and was part of that island of misfit toys for Vegas. I don't exactly know if he's going to be a massive factor in this series, but it would be good to see him get back to scoring at a decent rate. Another guy that comes to mind is Chandler Stevenson. Stevenson had a pretty good first round and was able to find the back of the net multiple times for his team. So for them, those could be some of the guys you look at. As for the Oilers, they have names too, and they stick out a little bit more. Guys like Evander Kane, Zach Hyman come to mind a bit here as well. I look at Vegas, and I think I see more potential for their depth to play a bigger role. But again, I look at the Oilers with Hyman and Kane. Kane is a little bit more of that star status. Maybe not so much now, but he's pretty, good still, and he is coming off of a season where he only played 41 games. Hyman is coming off of a 36-goal season. And for the Oilers, I think they have more scoring prowess from their non-stars, but these guys might not be stars, but are more towards that reliable level where you'd say, I do expect them to play well. So I do think this makes for a really good matchup, but now I do have to make my decision. Who am I going to be picking for this series? So, for this series, I am going to be picking the Edmonton Oilers in 7 games. This one is tough because I do like Vegas' blue line more, and I do think that their team could very well beat Edmonton, especially if depth comes into play. But I do also think that the Oilers' third line has been playing pretty well as of late. And at the end of the day, I'm picking the star power because they're going to get power play opportunities. The Oilers are. They're probably going to be able to take advantage of Brossoit, and they are probably also going to be in a situation where I'm not as scared of, if you're Edmonton, of Vegas as some other teams were in recent years. Vegas is still a very good team, but it seems like they constantly are losing pieces every year, and they could be in a spot where maybe they aren't able to get past Edmonton. And in general, I also think Stuart Skinner could be the difference maker in this series as well. You look at the fact that Skinner was peppered in the first round a few times against the Kings and stood on his own. So for him, if he's able to hang in here, you're probably going to be all right, because like the Dallas-Minnesota series, I also see this being a series where one team is more favored if this is a higher scoring affair. And for this series, I do think that Edmonton is probably the team that would be better off if this went and was a 5-4 game, 6-5, whatever the case may be. I would expect them to do well. Now, if McDavid and Rielly are hurt, that could be a problem. But at the same time, again, Vegas doesn't scare me as much this year. I don't know if it's a goaltending situation. I don't know if it's a fact that they don't have a player of McDavid and Rielly's caliber, but at the end of the day, I'm going to be picking the Oilers here. But I will say I could definitely be wrong in this one, but I'm going to go with the upset. But anyway, what are your picks for this series? Who will win it and how many games? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. Again, my apologies. I'm very tired, putting out 3 videos here today. Got to do notes after these all get out, and got to go to work. Was at work today, so I'm just kind of tired and all over the place. But anyway, please make sure to like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe. Have a great night, and you go off all kill right. Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.